So it is my pleasure to introduce the three guests, leading off with Miss Nancy Sopko, who is, and I won't eulogize her, she's asked me not to, but you got to know a little bit about who's going to talk to you. She is the Director of External Affairs at US Wind. In this role, she leads the company's government and public affairs initiatives, including stakeholder outreach. And prior to joining US Wind, she was the Executive Director of Special Initiatives on Offshore Wind, an independent project at the University of Delaware's College of Earth, Ocean, and Environment. Nancy, welcome, and we look forward to your presentation. With her is Mr. Timothy Mack, who is the Foundation's Package and Localization Manager. Tim joined US Wind from EEW AOS LLC, where he most recently served as the Business Development Manager for Offshore Wind. Welcome, Tim. And also a part of the team is Mr. Maynard Smith, who is the Maryland Business Engagement Manager. Maynard is a business development and diversity compliance consultant expert, having supported diversity and inclusion projects for MGM National Harbor, the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, the Prince George's County, Maryland Supply Development Diversity Division. Maynard, welcome. At this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Nancy Sopko.
All right, thank you so much, Tommy, and thank you, Joan, for all of your help in pulling this meeting together, and thank you to the Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council. This is a real privilege for us to be able to speak to you all today about our project, our company, and any prospects or opportunities that might exist as we build out clean energy for the Delmarva Peninsula. And set up a manufacturing facility as well in Baltimore County, how we can have maximum participation from minority businesses and labor unions, which is a top priority for us. I know that my colleague Tim Mack had been having some issues in getting on the Zoom, but I trust that those issues are being worked out. So I will share my screen and get started with our presentation. So I love this first slide because not only does it show kind of the beauty and the elegance of offshore wind turbines that we're seeking to construct in the open ocean, but it also gives you a real view of what a monopile foundation is. And we're going to be spending a lot of time today talking about monopile foundations because that is what we'll be manufacturing in Baltimore County at Sparrows Point. And so this is a great picture to show you exactly what we're talking about when it's installed in the ocean. If you take a look at that yellow piece of the turbine way at the bottom there, that is a monopile foundation. Not all offshore wind turbines use monopile foundations. Some use jacket foundations which have kind of four corners and sit like legs on the ocean floor. But monopile foundations are very, very common for offshore wind facilities, and that is why we have chosen to manufacture, to fabricate this type of foundation at our facility in Baltimore County. So just a little bit about the company. We're an American company headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland. We were awarded, as Tommy said, a federal lease off the coast of Maryland in 2014. I'll talk a little bit about that lease in greater detail on the next slide. But we are owned by two companies, Toto Holding, which is a construction company out of Italy, and Apollo Global Management, which is an investment firm out of New York City. So it was in 2020 that Apollo Global Management, which has over $400 billion in assets under management, invested in us. And we are very proud of that distinction. We are their first investment in the world in offshore wind. And so we are very proud to have their support. When Apollo came on board, they recruited Jeff Grabowski to be our CEO. And Jeff Grabowski, as some of you might know, if you've been following offshore wind at all in the United States, the first offshore wind facility in the United States is a wind farm called the Block Island Wind Farm, constructed off the coast of Block Island in Rhode Island. And Jeff Grabowski was CEO of the company Deepwater Wind when that wind farm was constructed and started operating. Jeff then became the co-CEO of Ørsted, U.S. Offshore Wind, and which now operates the Block Island Wind Farm. But we're thrilled that he is with us. I was hired soon after Jeff came on board. So I came on board in January of 2021. Tim Mack came on board, I believe, in February or March of 2021, and we've been assembling a really strong team ever since then. This is the U.S. wind lease area. So as Tommy said earlier, it is about 80,000 acres. With technological advancements, we could actually fit up to, at this point, up to 2,000 megawatts of offshore wind capacity in the lease area. That equates to about 121 turbines throughout the lease area, with 4 substations in the lease area. And so substations, for those of you who do not know, are structures in the ocean that collect the individual cables from the individual turbines and turn them into one cable per substation, so that we're not sending 120 some odd cables to the grid on land, but rather at full build out 4 cables. So that is each one cable per substation, multiple cables from the turbines. So our first project is the Marwin project. It was, we were awarded offshore renewable energy credits from the Maryland Public Service Commission back in 2017 to build the Marwin project. It equates to about 270, almost 300 megawatts of capacity in that OREC award. And that would be, we would comprise about 21 turbines to make up that amount of capacity. We are building in the southeasternmost corner of the lease area, so about 21 turbines and 1 of those substations. And then the second project, Momentum Wind, is the project we were awarded to move forward on in December. So just about a month ago, we were given the go-ahead by the Maryland PSC to build an additional project, about more than 800 megawatts of capacity. So we're adding another 55 turbines to the 21 of Marwin, bringing the grand total at this point to about 76 turbines that we have under contract. We are also all systems go on a federal permitting application process. We submitted the big, it's called a construction and operations plan to the federal government in the summer of 2020. We've been working with the federal government on their comments, additional questions, requests for additional information, etc. since that time. And we are expecting some forward progress and a decision on our completion and sufficiency of that big permit application in the next few months. So we're really happy about that. I'm going to turn it over to Tim now. Tim, if you can get your unmute your phone, and I don't know if you could see the slides, but I can let you know what we're looking at right now.
Okay, good. No, I can see the screen, and I'm fully ready to go. So
Great.
appreciate it. And it's good to meet everybody virtually here. My name is Tim Mack, and I'm the foundation lead and local content package manager for US Wind. And what does that mean? So my first task is I've got to secure the foundations for the turbines, which are the piles that are hammered in the ocean floor that will house the towers and the cells on top. And they're called monopiles. And they're effectively really giant metal piles or tubes, typically diameters in the 35 to 40 meter diameter, and average thicknesses of the steel, in the wall thickness of the pipes are going to be anywhere from 3 to about 4.5 to even 5 inches thick. So really heavy constructions, and they'll weigh anywhere up to, our heaviest one now is at 2,000 tons. And for our first project, and they will get as high as 2,500 tons each for our second project. So one of the developments, or how we've approached development between our Marwin project and Momentum, is we're going to take an incremental approach to establishing the workforce, but essentially we're going to build a factory that produces these large pipes. And ultimately they'll employ approximately 400 to 500 people. But we're also going to need a whole host of services surrounding this facility to help us execute our project. So what I kind of want to do is just detail, the development of Sparrows Point steel and the skill sets that we're going to need applying for that. And then there's significant subcontraction opportunities that exist, and we'll touch on that. So essentially the first project with Marwin, which is represented in the left, is we're going to basically, we have some existing buildings on site that we're going to retrofit and install it's called a circ welding system, but it's basically it's a large platform where you have a welder on top and inside, and you're welding these big cans or segments together. We're going to buy the segments overseas at an established supplier, and then we will learn and develop that within the first year. We're going to perform mounting of secondary steel and access ladders. So in that second image right there with the white ladder in front of the brown pile there, that is going to be welded to the outside of the pipe, and that's how people will climb onto the turbine out at sea. Then everything will be coated, and we have a series of buildings that were originally coating. So that really beautiful building to the left in the middle there, that is a 1950s era painting booth that helped build the shipyard or painted the ship segments when Sparrows Point Steel was still building, or when Bethlehem Steel was still building ships. But we're going to upgrade it with an automated system that you'll see rendered in the right-hand side. And then as part of the investment also is we have significant upgrades both to that dry dock, where we need to put in crane pads that'll be able to support, almost 3,000 tons of lifts or loads, on them. And then significant land upgrades, with just reinforcing the ground and making these large sand dunes that we'll store the piles on. Then in the second phase, Momentum is really where we go from maybe 50 to 70 jobs and a subcontract network that's doing 21 we're going to get into a utility level project at 55 units. And this is where we're going to take steel plates in sheets, and we're going to roll bend them into big rings like you see in the top hand on that green machine. And to do that, we're going to have to build a really large building. So we think probably 170 feet wide by 75 feet tall, and as much as almost 400 to 500 feet long. We will need another new building of similar dimensions to add welding capacity, because instead of bringing in segments, we're going to actually weld individual rings. And then we're going to also have to enhance coating capacity from maybe one line to as many as 3 or if not 4 lines. So that would really constitute our activities or our manufacturing activities within Sparrows Point Steel. I'd probably go to the next slide, Nancy. Thank you. So what is Sparrows Point, going to look like? And this is an early rendering that we had, and it shows, let's say that there's a little roof there that says U.S. Wind. That's the fabrication hall where we're going to execute the welding. And to the right, there's a building that's also existing, and that is going to be our paint hall. The blue buildings to the left is a rendering as to what the new building construction will look like. We may keep those buildings there. They could go elsewhere. Nice thing about that, the brown building there, with the piles coming out of it, that's the last original Bethlehem Steel building. It was constructed in 1918, and we're going to be able to repurpose and bring that back. And it's going to have a very specific activity. It's going to house steel fabrication long term and also painting activities. So it's kind of nice that this building at 100 years old is going to get repurposed, and it's actually showing a value. I mean, we're using it for a shell, but it's still going to have utility. Our idea here is to produce the monopiles here at this site, but you're also seeing, towards the back of the property, a lot of stacked blades, towers, and cells. We're going to stage all of the turbine components that go on top of the piles at Sparrows Point. So that means there's going to be a whole concert of inbound freight. We're going to need lots of steel stands and cradles to house all of these components, because you're not going to put a multi-million-dollar turbine and just put it on the dirt. So everything we buy has to have a frame that you stand it on. So there's going to be significant local fabrication opportunities for just general logistics support, as far as the equipment, let's say the steel frame equipment, fuel, logistics support, safety support, certification. And we've got to take this whole collection of products, and we've got to load it out on barges and get it out to site. So in addition to manufacturing, there is a very significant amount of, let's say, logistic, industrial, and certification processes that we're going to need to secure locally, from Maryland and through MBE-based entities. Maybe next slide. So we haven't really done a close-up of, of what, the monopile is, into scale. But this is actually a pretty, good rendering of the size. So the person walking in front of the monopile in that cradle system on the red multi-wheeled vehicle, that's a pretty good size ratio. So I mean, these things are really big, and to do that, everything has a special piece of equipment. So the cradles that I had mentioned there earlier, we might need 400 of these, of different types of applications for blades and everything, and they'll all be different shapes and sizes. So what else you see here? You see a lot of painting, and you'll see a lot of heavy equipment. So a lot of these activities we're going to be looking to, from within the state. So maybe next slide. So here's the a closer tied up of the fabrication hall, and in the beginning, as I said, we're gonna weld inside of it, but ultimately we're gonna weld plates together to make the rings, and that'll ultimately also become probably a paint hall, but also there'll be general steel fabrication going on in it. So we're gonna get a very good level of utilization out of that building, and hopefully it has, another long period of utility in its life again. So next slide. So to try to paint a little bit of a time frame, around the project, right now it's 2022, and we are engaged in pre-construction activities. So we're out doing surveys, we're doing some initial geotech work, we're looking at designs for, we've got to put a land usage design together. We've got to put in crane pads and design them. So we're doing a lot of those activities in 22. But in 2023, we're going to get into demolition and construction of these buildings in the dry dock. So that'll be one of the first, tasks that happens. And this will begin really the civil phase. And that will take all of 23 and 24. And really at 24, we want to be winding down all of this activity, hopefully by third quarter 24, so we can begin to ramp up and prepare for the upcoming construction season that will take place in 24, so we can install these instructions in these constructions in 2025. The types of skill sets that we're going to need, concrete is going to be a big factor. So if you're a firm that has anything to do with concrete, rebar, protecting concrete, we're going to want to hear from you. We want to hear from structural steel companies that have the ability to fabricate and erect steel on site. Masonry and exterior upgrades. That 100-year-old building is made out of brick, and it's got 100-year-old mortars, and we're gonna bring that building back. It's not going to look like a Starbucks at the end, but it's going to, we're going to bring it back to a very, high level of standards again. And then in any manufacturing site, electrical, utility, gas infrastructures are going to be needed. We're going to have to put in all our production equipment, again, land improvements and more marine, interfaces that I mentioned. And the production scope, is going to be welding of monopiles, coating of monopiles, and sourcing and assembling the secondary steel, which will constitute of steel fabrication, concrete fabrication, which a lot of slip forming will take place, and then electrical outfitting. And that's actually an important aspect there is, these turbines, we're talking about a lot of steel work, but there's a high degree of electrical frameworks that are going to go into these structures. So, we have the secondary steel, which I'll elaborate on a little bit. That's the access to get into the structure. But inside of it, there's a point where you plug the monopile or the turbine into the grid. So there's an interconnection point. There's switch gears in here. There's navigation systems in here. There's air conditioning systems in here. There's access ladders. There's elevators in this thing, because you're going to have to transport people, however high the turbine is. And you're going to need to be actually to get up inside these nacelles and service them. So there is a wide variety of electrical based activities that we're going to need to see that are going to be generally around, performance and maintenance of offshore turbines. So next slide. So once we get to momentum wind, we're going to bring on the new building. So that's going to bring on an entirely different skill set and enhance existing ones. The one that is going to be most important it's the first picture to the left. We're going to have to be able to bend flat steel plates into big rings or cans, what we call them. And we're going to have probably 2 to 3 of these machines, and we're going to weld that or to bend that item, we're going to have to weld 4 or 5 plates. So a single plate is going to weigh 150 tons each. So this is more for employment of Sparrows Point steel, but we're going to need logistics people to move all this steel around. We're going to need people to cut and weld this. We're going to need roll bending, longitudinal welding, lots of grinding, a lot of destructive testing or non-destructive testing, which means things like ultrasonic testing, X-ray testing. We're going to need overhead crane operators. And once we produce the rings, we're going to get into welding these. And the welding takes place both on top of the pile, because you have to weld straight down at 180 degrees, and then at the bottom on the inside of the pile. So one weld is going to take about 35 hours of welding time to execute a full weld seam. So that means multi shift teams are going to have to cycle in and out of a single welding operation. But we're going to need weld consumables. We're going to need gases to handle that. So there's outside opportunities on there. And then, more grinding, testing, fit up and rigging, mounting of secondary steel structures onto these cans that we do, and just general steel fabrication. And then when we get to this, everything that we make that goes in the water that is exposed, let's say above the ocean floor, has to have a coating on it. And typically it's a 3-layer marine epoxy, and we're going to need the supply of those consumables, the gases that will heat the rooms, because we essentially bake the monopile at an elevated temperature of maybe about 125 degrees for maybe, I don't know, 30 or 40 hours to do that. So all of that painting effort is going to be supported by local companies, but we're also going to need people that can help us with that activity. And then finally, we're going to need lots of inspection companies, dimensional control companies, certification companies, where we're going to be able to trace just about every piece of material that comes onto the port, whether it's the foundations or the blades or the nacelles. We're going to have to track it and organize it so it can be certified when we bring on the offshore wind farm. And maybe next slide. So the final component that I think is a pretty high value item for, let's say, the steel community, in Maryland, is we're going to need secondary steel. And this is how we access the turbines offshore. So you'll see a bunch of ladders hanging off the external pipe here. The process for access to these turbines is you're going to pull a boat up next to that ladder, and somebody's going to climb on there at sea in swell conditions. That boat could be going up, 3 or 4 feet per wave. Climb and access the tattle. There's a safety harness. They're going to activate that and bring it back down, and they're going to have to bring all their equipment up with that tiny crane, and then bring it inside the turbine with their equipment to perform maintenance. So that's a lot of work, and you're seeing the external side, but within this structure here, there is at least 4 or 5 levels of decks where you'll be accessing critical components within the turbine. But all of this we need to source, from companies and specifically MBE companies in Maryland. So this is again a high value added area that if your company you see contributing to their, this is something that we want to hear from you. And then finally, more of the construction skill sets where we're going to have to pick up all of this stuff, put it on a barge, and get it out to sea. So anyone that has a ability to interface with steel structures and loading them out on the water, that is something else that is of high interest to us to take an activity for. So this is a pretty well an overview of the activities, I would say, surrounding the foundation components within Sparrows Point Steel and the logistics. But our project has lots of other aspects associated with. We have an O&M harbor that we're going to have to go out and send people out on a daily basis to service the turbines. We're going to have cable routes that we're going to have to install. We're going to have to put in substations, an onshore substation, to plug the wind farm into the grid. So we are looking for companies that can help us, do this and if you're from Maryland, that is what we're looking for. So I would say is, I'm very happy to meet, any of you or take any questions, but I appreciate and thank you for your time.
So I think that is.
And just wanted to close out here with Maynard's contact information. Certainly we are here to answer any questions you have right now. But if you need time to process all the information we just threw at you, please feel free to reach out to Maynard Smith, our Maryland Business Engagement Manager. That's his email address, and he will get back to you with responses. So I'll stop my share right now.
Okay. We do have some questions in the chat. One of them is asked about what happens after 2025? Will this plant produce more of these? Also, have you thought about engaging a company who can help in training underserved communities and veterans, especially for the production phase. We have a Level Up program which does that. And that was from Sarajit Sengupta.
The answer is the facility is going to be ongoing. So we're building this facility to serve the entire offshore wind market, emerging off in the Atlantic. There's another facility up in New Jersey that does this type of work, but it can't serve the full market. There's about 220 turbines that are going to go in every year off the East Coast, and that facility can do 100 of them, or about 100, 120. We're going to fill out the balance of the market. So it's intended to be a long-term investment, into the industry on that end. And with respect to training, that is a focus that we are just getting into to starting here. Maynard is going to be a important cog in that story, and we are looking to raise a large workforce, both for subcontractors but also for ourselves. So we would like to interface with you on that and hear more about your organization.
Okay. We have another question from AB Consultants. Says, good afternoon. AB Consultants, Inc. offers geotechnical services as well as civil and much more. What are the steps that we have to follow in order to be a part of the project? And I think you said to contact Maynard, but you all may want to expound upon that.
Yeah, just real quick. I've actually received, I think, AB Consultants capability statement, and I'm very familiar with that company. I think I did respond back to him, but the next steps is that we will be back in contact with him within the next couple of months on next steps. So if he's still there.
Okay. Sean Bonds wants to know, what about the cybersecurity of the applications and networks?
We're going to need it. It's down the road, but yeah. So I would say is please, reach out to us. This business is going to have a global reach, and we're going to have lots of partners online all over the world. So having a cybersecurity is going to be a definite requirement.
Okay. Someone else asked if we can email the slides and information. And the question to that, I think Maynard, you did say that we could share the slide deck with them.
Yes.
So the answer to that question is yes. A lot of them are putting their information in the chat about their companies. I would suggest that you contact Maynard to get more information. Can you also talk about information technology needs, support, applications, resources needed, etc.?
I mean, we're going to be putting in a highly automated facility. It's going to be, everything is going to be CNC controlled, through operators, and all the performance metrics of all these machines are going to be captured in a single place. So all of that kind of stuff is going to absolutely be needed.
Okay. Someone said, so Ørsted announced a M&S facility in West OC, I guess that's Ocean City. How about US Wind?
Yep, we are still investigating opportunities for real estate in that region as well. And so those conversations are progressing, and hopefully we have something to announce soon.
Okay. Let's see. A lot of folks are just putting their information in the chat, which will HDD be needed for this phase project? We, Caldwell Marine International, did the HDD for the Block Island Wind Farm, and we also do nearshore submarine cable installation. They're MBE certified.
Yep. Nancy?
Well, I was just going to say that is still being analyzed internally, whether we will need HDD, but certainly if you have experience in the offshore wind industry doing that horizontal directional drilling, that would be very appealing to us, as that experience is hard to come by. But I don't think we've made a decision whether HDD will be used yet.
I would just back Nancy up. I think Caldwell, I mean, you're a pretty broad organization, but I think that we have engagement with you at some level. I'm not part of that componentry, but I would check. But if not, please reach out.
Okay. I don't know. I don't see any more questions in the chat. However, would you elaborate on the workforce training standards, European, federal, state, etc.?
The workforce standards are going to be, so first of all, this is a private project, and it's going to be, the standards are going to be applicable to whatever technical scope is being applied. So in steel, we're going to run to third-party standards, which could be American Bureau of Shipping, DNV, which is a governing body from Europe that operates here in the States. We're going to be setting ISO standards, but each of the project components is going to have its own industry standards to adhere to that will be certified by a second, or third party agency, and then have further scrutiny through owners, engineers, and then ultimately there will be practice even to the federal government, which that's all being handled now through our permitting, regime. But there are standards, but there's not like a pre-qualification that we need for anything. It's more about if you can fit an existing network of steel, electrical, or manufacturing or transportation standards.
Okay, I think we may have time for a few more questions. Did I miss any questions? That I don't see any more in the chat. So does anyone have any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, here's one. What is the pre-qualification process? We are an electrical MBE out of Baltimore that primarily focuses on large industrial projects.
I don't think there is. I think you just present your capabilities, interface with Maynard, and we're going to have, for Sparrows Point, there's going to be electrical services needed. We have obviously grid services that are going to be needed, and then there's going to be offshore services that are going to be needed. And it will also have a whole hosting of contracting parties, that'll be developing this, with multi-layers, from prime all the way down to, tier 1, tier 2 subcontractors. So it'll just really be dependent on what services that you're interested in discussing.
Okay.
And just to let everybody know, I read everyone's capability statements and comments that's shared with me. So please feel free to share any information you have about your companies.
Okay, and I'll try to get your information up again to put it in the chat.
Yeah, I just put my email address in the chat.
Okay, all right, great. Will there be an opportunity for a company to discuss the possibility to integrate technologies that reduce turbine O&M costs?
Not sure. It would be basing on a case-by-case basis, but I mean, if you have an experienced technology that's established within the industry, I think it would be pretty easy. But if you have something new, I mean, it's interesting to see what can be done. But I would say is please present, what you have, and if it's applicable, we can look at it. It would have to pass, a lot of criteria between the turbine supplier, outside certifying bodies, but that's how innovation is advanced in the industry. So we would, we'll certainly look at things.
Yes, and we've received many questions about whether or not you will receive a copy of the slides, and we covered that earlier. Yes, you will. You will get a copy of the slide deck. I think that may be all. Claudia, have I missed any questions? Are there anything you see that I did not cover?
No, I think you got everything.
Okay. All righty. With that being said, Do Tim and Nancy and Maynard, do you have anything else you'd like to add or any other information you'd like to share?
I just really want to thank you, Joan, again, for pulling this together. It's not an easy feat, especially with all the technological considerations. So I just really want to thank you for pulling this together, and Tommy for being here and saying those kind words at the start, and to you all for your attentiveness during our presentation. I hope it was helpful for you to understand what we're trying to do. And how you might be able to get involved, because we really would want as many Maryland workers on this project as possible. So Maynard and Tim, do you have anything else to add to that?
But just thanks everybody for their time.
And
Okay.
likewise, thank everyone for the time, and I'm looking forward to getting your capability statements and meeting all of you soon.
And thank you also for providing this opportunity to our members. And I will say, I cannot take full credit for this. It's a team effort. And, Nicole Miles, our graphics director, Claudia, Tommy, all of us play a vital role in this. But okay, with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Tommy. And
Okay, thanks, Joan.
you're welcome.
And listen, folks, like I said when we started, if you really want to know about what's happening in, offshore wind projects, you were in the right place today. And I think we have permission you're going to get the slides. Like with all the webinars we do and we record, we hang them on our CRMSDC website. And I believe we have permission to do that. And so if you didn't get all the notes today, you can take your time tonight at home after dinner and go right back through and pick up everything that Nancy and Tim laid out. And so it will be posted, probably within the next 48 hours by Nicole when we update our website, and it'll be there. But I don't think you can get better than this. Maynard has said, send me those capability statements. He needs work. Right?
Absolutely.
We got to stay employed. We want to try to get you some work. So send those capability statements. That's what this is all about. Like Sharon Pender would tell you, it's about a license to hunt, and the hunting starts now. Okay. I want to thank the distinguished guests for being here. And I think at this time, I also want to thank our sponsors for that worked with us to put this together. And again, Nancy, Tim, and Maynard, thanks very much. And we definitely will stay in touch in order to help you be successful with your project. And today's sponsors that helped us with this, you can see them up there: Exelon, BGE, Pepco, Hilton, Amcus, Capital One, CompuGain, JD, my eyes are getting bad, JDC Events. And I'm a former aviator, but that last couple of slides, those last lines, Nicole got me.
SB and Company and
Okay,
SP
help me out,
Stroud.
Joan. Thank you much. So to our sponsors who we could not do this, and more sponsors to come there that support this council as we work with our MBEs. I want two last things. The next upcoming event that we have, if you're interested in learning more about access to capital and you're in the construction business, surety bonding. On the 17th of February, we will have a surety bonding webinar hosted by me through the Virginia Minority Business Development Center. I got a gentleman named Peter Gibbs. He's the former director for the Small Business Administration's Office of Surety Guarantee. He now runs his own company. He's a Marylander called Foundations, Bonding and Insurance Solutions. And so we'll have him on the 17th of February. We will also have, in collaboration with the Meridian Management Group, Mark Harrison will talk about the overcoming funding challenges. As we know, for our MBEs, one of the biggest barriers is access to capital, especially when you need it. And so we'll be partnering with them to talk about that on the 23rd of February. And so you want to save those dates, and our flyers will be coming out through the council and through the center. Again, thanks everyone for joining us. Can't thank the panel, the guests enough, and we look forward to the future of what you're doing. Thanks very much.
All right.